And welcome back to Sports Talk. I'm your host, Kyle Sweeney. There's a very busy slate of games in the NCAA tournament. The first two rounds have complete. There are a lot of things to get to, so let's get right into it. Joined once again, Cam and Henry. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
And of course, Gonzaga's NCAA record-tying 9 straight Sweet 16 streak has been snapped after a loss in the round of 32 to Houston. They cruised past Georgia in round 1, a 21-point victory, and they were matched up with one of the best teams in the country, and the game did not disappoint. Cam, this was a battle between two Hall of Fame coaches, and last show you were really high on Houston. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, it was just an absolute phenomenal game for not just Gonzaga and not just Houston, but anybody watching. You know, Gonzaga dominated Georgia in their first matchup, but here's the bottom line. It was an absolute chess match between Kelvin Sampson and Mark Few. Sampson obviously choosing to double EK down in the post early. Few countered by subbing in Ben Gregg a little bit late into that first half, getting him into that short corner that opened up some of Ju's offense. The one thing that I thought they could have done better in the first half was get Nolan Hickman involved. You kind of look for that shooter on the offside when they're doubling the post like that. Gonzaga didn't get Hickman going. They missed him on a couple of opportunities, but that second half, oh my goodness. That was a Final Four level second half by both teams. Gonzaga, their offensive metrics, let me just point out, I got a couple stats here for you guys. 14 of 23 from the field, that's 60%. They shot 6 for 9 from 3 in that second half, that's 67%. And then 15 of 15 from the free throw line, obviously 100% there. Only Duke and Ole Miss had better halves offensively. I mean, it was a beautiful game to watch and a beautiful game to play out, and Houston came out on top.
It really was, and it felt like Gonzaga was right there the entire time, but Henry, there was one player that stuck out on Houston. It was really the reason why they won that game.
Yeah, LJ Cryer truly had the game of his life. 30 points, made 6 threes. Another thing that I think is interesting is just looking at the rebound difference and the turnover difference. Even though Gonzaga shot the ball better, Houston won on the glass and with turnovers, and so I think that was the difference maker.
Career high 30 points for Cryer to take the win in round 2. They're moving on to the Sweet 16. And after the first 2 weekends, only one double-digit seed remains, and that's Arkansas, of course, coached by Hall of Fame coach John Calipari. So it doesn't feel like there's a lot of Cinderellas. There's a lot of chalk. It's very chalky. I mean, the top 6 seeds are all from, the conferences, the top 4 conferences now with the Pac-12 being gone. It's the lowest total of conferences represented at the Sweet 16 ever. Of course, not a lot of Cinderellas. But the top seeds have looked like the best teams all season long. Of course, the 1 seeds have really, separated themselves from the rest of the field. So, Henry, we'll start with you. Which team has impressed you the most so far through the first 2 rounds?
Yeah, you mentioned the top teams looking like the best teams all season long. When I think of that, I think of Auburn. They came in as the number 1 seed, and they've looked all the parts so far. They get a big win over Creighton. Their unanimous All-American, Janai Broome, didn't even have his best game, but Tahad Pettiford off the bench, delivering 23 points. And so I think that just shows that they're a dangerous team. They have multiple weapons, and I'm excited for their Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Houston a lot going into this bracket, how it shaped out. But Duke really impressed me as another team. They kind of cruised to both wins against Baylor. And another team that impressed me is Texas Tech. This is a team with a top 5 offense and a top 40 offense, according to Ken Pom. They've got a star in JT Toppin. It's definitely an interesting West region there that they'll have to fight out of with Maryland, Arkansas, and Florida. But I could see a path to the Final Four for this Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Definitely, and in that stacked region with Florida, UConn, and among other teams, they have really impressed in that first couple of rounds, But as we mentioned, not a lot of Cinderellas, but there were a lot of really good games in those first 2 rounds, just a lot of action overall. But Cam, what was your favorite game of the first 2 rounds so far?
I mean, it has to come down to the game with the game-winning shot. The first game-winning shot as the clock expires when the team is down since 2018, since that 2018 tournament with that Loyola Chicago run. They had a couple. But Colorado State, a super hot team coming into this tournament, they couldn't get it going at the end against Maryland enough. Derek Queen absolutely took over at that last point. Some call it a travel. I say let him play. It was a great finish, a great move, and he ended up scoring and giving them the win. So I'm excited to see that Florida matchup, but a good run so far by Colorado State. They were kind of the last sleeper team. I don't know if you count Arkansas as a sleeper per se, since they are coached by, a legendary coach, but Colorado State was kind of that last sleeper team, and they ended up falling.
And Henry, I know there was a second-round matchup that included 2 of the top teams in the country, regardless of seed, and I just want to hear your thoughts about what that game turned out to be.
Yeah, it's really tough to, outdo the Derek Queen game-winning shot, especially something that hasn't happened since 2018 in the tournament. I feel like we've seen so many big shots, and so a game like that to finish that way is just remarkable. But looking just kind of across the bracket, you talked about two teams with a lot of pedigree. Florida being a number 1 seed, UConn being the number 8 seed coming off consecutive national championships. That was already going to be a great coaching battle between Todd Golden and Dan Hurley, and it ended up being a great game. It was tied at halftime. We saw Walter Clayton hit a big shot, big three-pointer with 1 minute left to put Florida up by 6. I think that was really the game-changing shot, and then Florida was able to kind of cruise their way, make their free throws, seal out the victory. But they played great defense, and they've shown that when their defense is able to turn up, they're able to get stops, they're able to shut UConn's water off in this case. They held them to under 40% from the field, under 30% from 3. And so just really a great all-around win from Florida, but still a great game nonetheless. Yeah.
Some great games in the round of 32 that you guys mentioned. As we've mentioned, only 4 conferences are being represented in the Sweet 16. So looking ahead, there are a lot of top-tier programs in those Sweet 16 matchups. And we'll start with you, Henry. Which one of those Sweet 16 matchups are you looking forward to the most?
There's so many number 1 seeds remaining, and I think a lot of people are looking at those matchups. But let's look at Michigan State versus Ole Miss, right? Michigan State has the 2nd best rebound percentage in the country, whereas Ole Miss only has 1 player averaging over 5 rebounds a game. So just the battle on the glass is going to be incredibly interesting. And then you want to look at just the depth of scores that Ole Miss has. They have 6 guys, averaging 10 points or more per game. Something that I think Gonzaga achieved earlier in the season, at least with 5 or 6 guys, but just to do that throughout the entire season is really remarkable in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to that matchup down in Atlanta.
An underrated matchup, again, a 2 versus 6 in Michigan State and Ole Miss. Cam, what about you?
Well, sorry to keep the trend going, but I'm also going to pick a 2-6 matchup. BYU Alabama. Coming into this, I liked BYU's ability to score on teams. I also, their ability to score in bunches with a bunch of different guys. 8 guys scored 5 or more points in their prior matchup against Wisconsin. They're just an absolutely great offense to watch. Both top 10 offenses. Alabama pushes the pace. They're number 1 in pace. Just getting over St. Mary's, who was like the slowest in pace, as we know. But BYU definitely scores differently than Alabama, but they're both super efficient from inside that 3-point arc. So it'll be interesting. Neither team takes care of the ball super well. So it'll kind of be an offensive junkie sort of matchup. And, that's something that I like to watch.
The winner of that game will take on the winner of Arizona and Duke. Of course, Duke has been looking like one of the best teams we've seen in recent years. But that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Henry, for providing us with some ball knowledge. As we take an end to Sports Talk, of course, the second show, stay tuned for more bracketology content coming here from GUTV. From Kyle Sweeney, till next time.